the more that she can feel comfortable just saying whatever it is that she wants in the moment and you give it to her, the more that she begins to trust that you really want her to have that pleasure, and the more that she begins to communicate.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. In this episode, we're going to be talking about making penetration pleasurable and how to make intercourse amazing and how to close the orgasm chasm in your marriage, as well as some specific techniques on how to make sex with your spouse sweeter and more worthwhile. I love doing episodes like this because I learn a lot about how to make sex fun and meaningful in my own marriage. I'm reminded, though, that great sex is far more of a matter of the heart than it is about performance. I met Susan Bratton a year ago when we both shared the stage on Monica Tanner's Intimacy Summit. Susan is a woman in her 60s having sex like she's in her 20s. She's a gifted speaker and educator about sex, and she covers a lot of material. I love how she helps me see what's possible for my wife and me in our own marriage bed. If you like this episode, you'll definitely like our upcoming virtual retreat all about improving sex in your marriage this July. For this retreat, you and your spouse are going to get a hotel room, Airbnb, or send the kids to grandma's house so you have the house all to yourselves. And you'll join my wife and I live Friday night, Saturday morning, and Saturday night in 3 sessions. We'll give you specific fun and sexy homework to try. The goal of this retreat is to explore sexuality in your marriage at a deeper level than you ever have. You'll walk away with new techniques, confidence, and learn new things about each other and more at an intimate level. Again, the dates are July 12th through 13, and those details are on our website. And let's also not forget our next in-person retreat in sunny St. George, Utah this October. This is what one past participant said about the retreat. She said,
"It was so nice to talk to other people about sex and intimacy because so much in our world today, I feel we either talk about it perversely, don't talk about it at all. And it was so wonderful to talk about it with people like in the pure form and the wonderful form that sex provides in marriage. And it was just so wonderful and healing to talk to the same people about it and just feel supported. And it's just so wonderful. Like my life has changed and I'm beginning to form a new path in my life because of what I've experienced here."
These retreats are fun, romantic, deep, and instructive. We combine instruction and coaching into a powerful weekend. Your marriage deserves the very best investment of your time, talents, and energy. So, come vacation with us. It's limited to just 20 couples, so act now. I love hearing your podcast reviews. If you hear your Apple Podcast review read on the air on this podcast, email me at support@getyourmarriageon.com. And if you haven't left a review yet, do it now, and you might get a gift shipped to you. Here's what this one person said. This podcast has been tremendously helpful to me to better understand my own responsibility in helping improve all aspects of intimacy in my marriage. They do not shy away from topics that many in the Christian culture environment consider taboo, but I feel like they do it in a very reverent and respectful way that acknowledges the sanctity of marital intimacy, and they always try to point things back to strengthening your marriage and being more selfless and not selfish. I am so grateful for their candidness in addressing these topics and wish I had this resource available to me much earlier in my married life. Thank you for that amazing review, Spenning CO, and appreciate it. That's exactly what this podcast is all about. Now, let's talk about how to make sex amazing, pleasurable, and fun. If you learned something new in this episode, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear what you think. Susan, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. It is such an honor to have you here today.
You know, how sweet was it when you said to me, I've studied you a lot. And I thought, oh, Dan, thank you so much for studying me. I
Yeah.
mean, that really warmed my heart. And I appreciate that you took the time to really do a lot of research. I can already tell by the lines of questions that you've planned for this show that it's going to be maybe one of the most powerful things that your listeners have ever heard in their life because we're going to go. You are boldly
Yes.
going to go where very few want to go and
Right.
right
Right.
where we need to go. So we're going to talk
Exactly.
specifically about lovemaking, making lovemaking pleasurable. So you want to do it for your whole life long. And
Absolutely.
I think there's so many myths we can bust today, so many reframes we can give your audience, so much inspiration that's available in the subject matter that I'm
Hmm.
excited to get started with you.
That's great. So let's pick up where you started getting into this work. I know you've been married to your husband around 10 years at this time, and things weren't working out very well. Tell me about what things felt like, what were things like, and then what did you do next?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've now been married to Tim for 32 years. Well, 30 years, 2 years longer. We've been together for 32 years.
Uh-huh.
And for the first dozen or so years of our marriage, I slowly pulled away from him intimately. I made
Uh-huh.
it the first couple of years, but then after that, that poor guy, he did everything he could do to try to get me into the bedroom.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he begged, he bargained, he
Uh-huh.
did honeydews, he pouted, he demanded, he did, anything he could, took me on vacations to get sex,
Uh-huh.
anything.
Uh-huh.
And it was just that it turns out, hindsight is 2020.
Right.
And really it just wasn't great for me. I'd been doing it because it was an obligation. It started
Right.
out good, but
Uh-huh.
really the kind of the love chemicals wore off.
Mm-hmm.
The honeymoon period was over, and I just did everything I could think of to get out of having sex.
Uh-huh.
And my husband is a very kind of Aspergery, kinesthetic person. So
Mm-hmm.
not having an intimate physical connection is harder on him than it
Uh-huh.
is on most people. Because if you
Yes.
think about sexuality, the bell curve, everything in sexuality is on a bell curve. There's, most people,
Uh-huh.
like most people, are heterosexually monogamous, long
Right.
term, if they can do it, partners. That's what most people are. Most people are happy to have snuggles and cuddles and some physical affection, but some people need a lot of it, a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my husband. He is a little kitty cat that wants to be petted all the time. He wants to sit in your lap and get petted. He would work from his little kitty cat laptop on your lap and live his life if he could just
Uh-huh.
be petted.
Uh-huh.
So it was particularly painful for him. It wasn't as bad for me. And a lot of guys, they think about it that way, that it's more painful for them to not have close, intimate lovemaking than it is for their wives. Their wives are
Uh-huh.
like, I could live without it. And the men
Yeah.
are like, I can't live without it.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's very, very common as well. Not that there aren't couples where it's the
It's
woman who's
reversed.
like,
Right.
I
Uh-huh.
want the sex and my husband doesn't. And more now, over the last 2 decades since I've been doing this, more and more, it's men who have lost their libido. And that is directly attributed to the obesity issue we have
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that fat is an endocrine disruptor, testosterone disruptor. It lowers your testosterone, it increases your estrogen. And
Right.
testosterone is the molecule of sex. So we decided, Tim and I have always gotten along really, really well. And I wasn't telling him the truth about how unhappy I was and how miserable it was making me. And he was having an affair to try to cope with the fact that he was in a sexless marriage with a woman that he loved. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to ruin our marriage. He didn't want to get divorced. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was his coping mechanism. So we had a lot of therapy to work through. We had a lot of therapy to work through around some sexual trauma that I'd had. We had a lot of therapy to work around what I felt was overly clingy and neediness. It was like
Mm-hmm.
too much from me.
Right. Right.
Um, and we had to really get honest. The number one thing we did to fix our relationship was we got honest with each other. We started dealing with what was really happening. The
Right.
second thing that we had to work on were some of our traumas and coping mechanisms. The third thing that we had to do is we had to learn how to have good sex that was pleasurable for both parties.
Right.
And so it was really those three things that made a big difference. There were some techniques that we learned that worked well,
Mhm.
but it was really, I think, the first aha moment that I would share with your viewers and listeners is that sex is a learned skill. That good sex,
Yes.
you don't learn it from your family, you don't learn it in school. There's no, and honestly, pornography is not good sex. Pornography doesn't want you to have sex. They want you to watch porn,
Right.
fantasy.
Uh-huh.
And, movies don't show good sex. They don't want you to have good sex. They want you to watch movies. I mean, there is literally no place you can go. Even our
Mhm.
sex ed system has failed us, of course, as well.
Mhm.
So that's, of course, given rise to people like myself, an intimacy expert who teaches passionate love-making techniques. And honestly, I'm kind of rare, Dan. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I've been doing this for two decades now, writing and doing videos, things that help people transform having sex into making love, transform friction into connection, make it so that people don't have performance anxiety, that their desire for each other is high, that they can say and do anything, that they have incredible orgasms. I mean, even just understanding that what we think about, the paradigm that we think about orgasm is completely an old style and doesn't take into consideration 1/10 of 1% of what kind of pleasure potential we have. When we even just reset that, it changes everything. And so when couples are kind of at the end of their rope and they know that what they're doing isn't working, some of them will give up. They'll get divorced. They'll marry someone else and have the same problem later. And some couples fight for their marriage and say, okay, I'm willing to learn. I want to learn. I'm open to knowing. Please help me. And that's who we're talking to today.
That's so good. That's so good. So then you met Dr. Patty, and that kind of opened your eyes to wait. Sex can be really, really fun and pleasurable for me. It's not just a way of managing my husband. And then since then, you've gone on to, like what you said, you're the sex coach for millions, right? You help through your books and everything that you've produced.
Yeah.
All right, Susan, I've read and experienced myself how they say 70% of women just don't orgasm from intercourse. That's why you need direct clitoral stimulation. So if you're in the lucky 30% that do, great. Intercourse isn't that much of a deal for you in your marriage. But for the rest of us, again, bell curve, right? Like the majority of people, for women at least, intercourse is more wah wah. Like it's great for him, but not really fantastic for me. I need other things to find more pleasure in the bedroom. But you changed that story for me a little bit in what you teach in some of your programs. Can you talk more about how to make intercourse great?
Yes. Thank you. And I honestly think if you're going to talk about married couple and you don't just start with honesty and intercourse, those are
Uh-huh.
like the two things. If we
Yes,
can't tell
exactly.
each other the truth and we
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
can't have mutually satisfying and pleasurable intercourse, then let's start there. So, the very first thing that I would say is that I want you to start really talking to each other because you won't be able to get to mutually satisfying intercourse unless you can begin to say anything that you need to say
Right.
without making it feel like you're going to hurt your partner's feeling.
Hmm.
And, I know, Dan, you teach couples how to do this all the time with I statements and, owning your own feelings and not being a blamer or shamer and all of those kinds of things.
Hmm.
But there's a point at which a couple has to say, look, let's start together and learn together and figure this out. Okay, what do we need to do? And it's getting over that very first thing, which is, well, I guess she's just not the woman who can have the orgasm from intercourse, but we're still going to do it. Like you
Yes.
can't think about that.
Uh-huh.
You have to think about it like, oh, okay, we just didn't learn how to do that.
Mhm.
That's good to know. Oh, every woman can have orgasms from intercourse. Yes,
Yes.
every woman. I think once you start there, you're like, okay, how do I do it? And here's how it works. It's basically a couple of different things. The first thing is that it requires an understanding that women take longer to come to full arousal than men. Let's say men are 2 minutes, women are 20 minutes. And everything is on a bell curve. So whatever I say, know that there are, there's always like, well, mush in the numbers,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Uh-huh.
we're speaking in generality. So, okay, it's going to take her 20 minutes. Oh, but she doesn't even like sex and she just wants to get it done, you
Uh
know?
huh.
And
Uh
so
huh.
you have to be willing to slow down to
Mm-hmm.
allow your body to catch up to his level of turn on. He's testosterone dominant. You're not. And so he wakes up with a morning erection if he's healthy every morning. He probably has a number of nocturnal erections because he's healthy. So I think those are some very important things to understand is that you need some coping mechanisms for helping her get into her arousal. And one of them that I like to talk a lot about is yoni massage or vulva
Yes.
massage.
Uh huh.
And I
Yes.
want a parking lot that so we can come back to it a bit if you'd
Okay.
like to, because I think we should address intercourse.
Yes. But I think there's also a component before you get there, and that's she's got to believe that she's capable of
That's
having
right.
pleasurable intercourse. Like part of it is she's got to be willing to choose it too, I think.
Yeah, she's got to be willing to know that she's not broken and that she is the kind of woman who can. And all it takes is just learning some skills. And so, but she also has to understand why she thought she was broken. And that's
Mm.
because she's not ready to go like he is. Like she thinks her libido is back. It's not. She has what, and I know you've probably had a lot of guests who talk about spontaneous versus responsive desire,
Yes.
but I
Hmm.
think it is very important to talk about, which is that generally most women are responsive to arousal. They want to be seduced, which means
Hmm.
to be moved toward pleasure. And their male bodied partners, their husbands are spontaneous. They are
Yes.
ready to go. And that
Uh-huh.
men need to be ready to go because
Hmm.
they never know when we're going to be ready. So they got to be ready to go. So it's actually beneficial.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's a big thing. And then the second thing as well is that she really needs a lot of what we currently call foreplay.
Uh-huh.
And I don't like this whole idea of there's foreplay and sex. So if you
Uh-huh.
listen to things that I've said in the past,
Uh-huh.
I think that's a bad frame. We're going to be
Yes.
doing a lot of reframes
You're right,
in this
right, right.
conversation. And a bad reframe is there's foreplay and sex. And so we're just going to rush through to get to sex because that sex is actually intercourse. It's going to rush through to get to intercourse.
Uh-huh.
When really the whole experience is pleasurable. The being held, the kissing, the hand stroking, the breast play, all of these things are incredible. But then a guy will be like, if I do that stuff, she's just going to fall asleep. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, it is when you enter into this agreement to work on this together, it is her job to stay present. She wants to check out. She
Uh-huh.
wants it to be over. 'Cause it's been bad for her the whole time. That's
Right,
why
right.
she
Uh-huh.
stopped wanting it. You, as the man, one of the things I say to guys, and one of the things I like about talking to guys specifically is you could just tell guys what you need to tell them, and they're like, okay, all right, I'll do it.
Uh-huh.
I love that about men. And one of the things I say to guys is it's very important for you to carry the heavy burden. You are going to carry the burden of seduction and arousal. She needs you to carry the water for her at first before you fill up her cup and it flows over. You
Okay.
are the water carrier. If you have to be the initiator every single time for the rest of your life, it's your job. And if you think about it as, okay, it's just my job, I'm going to do this job because ultimately, when I carry that water for her, when I do that, her cup starts to overflow. And then the water doesn't feel like anything. It just feels like fun. It feels like we're swimming in a pool of pleasure together. It's not even
Uh-huh.
carrying anymore.
Uh-huh.
Now it's
It's
just
not a
we're in it.
burden. Yeah.
It's not a burden after a while. You just have to start with it. You're starting a dead fire, you're starting a wet pile of logs. But
Uh-huh.
pretty soon those logs are going to warm up and dry out, and she's going to catch flame so much more easily that she's going to be smoldering between dates because the sex is going to get so good. And you're just fixing what used to rain on your sex parade. And once that's done, you don't have to worry about it. The only thing that could happen after that is if there's an illness, either one of you. When you're ill, it depresses your libido. So you do have to wait until you're a little healthier, but you can compromise. There's lots of things you can do to keep your physical intimacy good. Don't always require penetration.
Oh, yeah.
But let's get it so
Hmm.
it's so good that even when she's sick, she wants it. Right? That's kind of how
Uh-huh.
I am.
Exactly.
The minute I know I'm feeling better after I've been ill, I just had a flu. And yesterday I was lying in bed and I was working from bed because I was just getting over this darn flu. And I thought, oh,
It's
I'm
back.
feeling better.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
haven't had sex yet, but I've been thinking about it, right?
Right, right.
We're
Uh-huh.
both recovering from the flu.
Uh-huh. Got it.
So the second thing is that so you are the instigator, you are the seducer, and you need to start by giving her things like small offers. Small offers help her get out of her busy head and into her body and starting to say, yes, would you like a glass of wine? I'll give you a foot rub. Tell me about your day. That's seduction, right?
Uh-huh.
She's never going to have intercourse if that's what you're offering, which is why guys feel so rejected because they're making her a big offer. They're like, do you want to have sex? She's like, oh, heck no, I do not want to have sex. That's the last thing on mine. It's the first thing on his. And so once he understands, oh, I got to scale back my offers. I got to slow down. I got to help her get out of her head and into her body. Okay, I'll do it. So
Uh-huh.
that's the very first thing. The second thing is that, yes, a lot of our younger sexperts out there, they're like, you have to touch the clitoris if you want to give her orgasms from intercourse. And that is in fact true, but it's often people think about the clitoris as this little tip, this little spot.
Right.
And that is the tip of the clitoris. But the clitoris is an entirely giant structure that if I took it out of her vulva and I put it in the palm of your hand, completely cover the palm of your hand. She
Uh-huh.
has 3 big erectile tissue chambers in her vulva. She doesn't even know this about herself.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And these mimic the 3 tubes of erectile tissue in his penis.
Uh-huh.
And his penis is twice as big as what you see. So imagine it as big as it is when it's erect, and then double that. And
Uh-huh.
all the material inside that double size is erectile tissue. And that is exactly how much she has, but it's all inside wrapped around her vagina. And it comes to a little teardrop point, and that's where the tip of the clitoris is, but the whole clitoris drapes around her vagina. But because it's inside and it's got these nooks and crannies, it takes that 20 minutes to get filled with the same blood that takes him 2 minutes to fill his penis to get his erection. So his erection is not the signal that things are ready for penetration. His
Right.
erection can come and go. And as he gets more used to thinking about that, he can get hard, go soft, get hard, go soft, get hard, go soft. And that should never be a problem when they are finally ready for her to be entered. She can work with him. She can orally pleasure him, manually pleasure him, tell him some dirty stories, whatever. And he'll get hard again, get hard again. So, couples need reassurance that that's normal and okay and everything is
Mhm.
fine. It's not just this drive. I've got a heart up. Let's have, because then one more time she has sex with
Mhm.
no orgasms, and it's no fun for her. So she needs all the plumpy tissue to get filled with blood so that it has more surface area, so that it sends more signals to her brain of pleasure. Because everybody knows that the brain is the biggest sex organ, but they really don't know why. And that is why.
Right. That's it. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Every little part of her vulva and vagina, the vulva is the outside, the vagina is part of the inside. Every little part of all of those structures and pieces down there, they send signals to different parts of the brain. And so the more of them that are pleasured, the more of them that are plumped up, the more of them that are stimulated, the more pleasure she's going to feel, and the easier it will be for her to do the crossing of the orgasm chasm, closing that orgasm gap between how
Yes.
easy it is for him and how hard it is for her. So I think that's also a very, very important piece of it is the timing, the allowing, the
Uh-huh.
slowing down of it, the not racing toward penetration, the spending more time with the things we used to call foreplay that are just a part of sex. And they're often as much, if not more important to her than just the penetrative piece of it until she starts coming really well from orgasms. And then that's going to be one of her top things, maybe her top thing, probably her top thing, but it
Uh,
doesn't have to be. She can like all of it and you can like all of it. Once you get more skills in all of these different areas, oral, kissing, breast play, vulva and lingam massage,
mhm.
etc.
That's so good. A metaphor that makes sense for me is if I had just a balloon that I haven't blown up yet, compared to a balloon that I've filled up completely, there's far more surface area on an inflated balloon, right? It's taking up more space. And that's why arousal is so important. We need to fill more surface area so we have more sensitivity for the things that are pleasurable.
So it's interesting that often I blow up a balloon to teach people what the vagina is really like. And I think that since we were talking about anatomy, it's a very important conversation. So, vagina is more like a pocket, it's flat. And when you put something in it, it expands it. Just like if you have a pocket in your pants, you put your hand in it, then it gets big.
Hmm.
It's also very important to understand that the vagina itself kind of has like a little neck like a balloon and then it's round in the back with a little depression at the top where the cervix presses down into the vaginal canal.
Uh-huh.
And the vagina itself doesn't necessarily love friction.
Hmm.
That doesn't feel as good to a vagina as one of my orgasmic intercourse techniques is called the heart tongue technique.
Yes.
And I have all of them at orgasmicintercourse.com. It links you right into 10 orgasm techniques that you can try one by one to learn how to have orgasmic intercourse. And one of them is called the heart tongue technique. And I think it's a very, very important one for our male partners because what we actually like is not necessarily just in and out of the neck of the vagina, but we like our male partner to use his penis kind of like a tongue where he's actually touching and licking all of the inside of that expanded balloon. And he's not necessarily just touching and licking the skin on the inside of the vagina, which is called the vaginal mucosal lining. It's
Uh-huh.
actually the tissue through that. It's the pressure of feeling the penis pressing on the tissue inside our womb, our abdomen, that whole area, our pelvic bowl. And so in jujitsu, one of the things they teach you is that they do a lot of like, or hapkido, they'll break boards
Yeah.
and or brick or things like that. And the way that they teach you in martial arts to break bricks and boards is not to kick the board or kick the brick, but to kick through it. And that's what you want to do with your penises. You want to feel through the tissue, through the lining to her body. You want
Uh-huh.
to connect with her pelvis
Hmm.
through the tissue. And so moving from this notion of the old in and out to, oh, this is a tongue and I'm licking the whole inside. This is more articulate. And then the second piece of it, the reason it's called the heart tongue is that a lot of men also think about their penis as like a pole, a staff, like a piston.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And really, they haven't connected their heart to their penis.
Hmm.
And so when you make love to her and you have your penis inside her, then think to yourself, I am going to pour my love right from my heart out through my penis, almost like a fire hose of my love for her.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
She's gonna feel that.
Yes.
She's gonna she's gonna be like, "What are you doing? That feels good." All of a
Hmm.
sudden, you're out of your, "Oh, I've got to give her a pounding,"
Hmm.
and you're in your, "I love her so much."
Hmm. Hmm.
And that heart, tongue, articulate, loving, deeply stimulating, full of my love for you. Even just that single technique and getting her turned on, getting the balloon filled up, right?
Yes.
Getting the
Right.
surface area, getting
Uh-huh.
letting the blood flow, getting the stimulation she needs to have the blood flow, the kissing, the words of adoration, the full body touch, the breast play, the nipple play, the yoni massage before penetration, and then that kind of loving ministration.
I love what
Yeah.
you're saying because we make love with our hearts, not just with our body parts. It's a full, wholehearted experience. And I love that you're describing.
Good.
So
Thank you.
so many couples rush right to intercourse because he's erect and they
Yeah.
can put lube on it and go in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, we need to back up a bit. Now, of course, deep kissing, breast and
Yeah.
nipple play, caressing the entire body. But let's talk about yoni massage. Yoni meaning like vulva touching and just
Yeah.
how to do that really well.
Yeah, sure. Yoni, Yoni, is a word that I like. It's a Sanskrit word, and it really symbolizes it's a tantric lovemaking word for the female urogenital system, both the
Uh-huh.
inside and the outside. And so what I like about it is that it's holistic.
Hmm.
It's not just I'm touching the clitoral tip, I'm
Right.
penetrating the vaginal
Hmm.
opening. All the stuff down there is vital. And
Hmm.
that is another reframe that I think is a very important one when you're trying to cross the chasm.
And one more
And
on that too.
yeah,
It comes with the word yoni to me carries a little bit of a reverence also. Like you're approaching your spouse or whatever with a bit of reverence about her essence of all of her too. And in that, it's like worshiping the feminine in it. That's what I think.
it is.
So, mhm.
I agree. I love that. And thank you for saying that. Yeah, there's an honoring to it and an inclusiveness that it's just
Yes.
not just a hole that you're putting a penis in.
Right.
Right. Because that's how she's been feeling if she doesn't want sex.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yoni massage. I often tell men start from the outside and work your way to the center. I talk about my bullseye touch technique, which is think about a bullseye. What do you want to do?
Uh-huh.
You want to hit the creamy center. You want to go right for the center. But
Uh-huh.
the problem is that women need that time to warm up. And if you just grab them by the creamy center, too much for them too fast. Now,
Hmm.
I tell women, he wants you to touch his penis right away. He needs you to touch his penis right away.
Hmm.
He needs comfort and the calming and the grounding of that touch on his penis. That doesn't mean you have to put it in. That just means you get to play with it and it feels
Uh-huh.
good and it's nice.
Uh-huh.
So, starting with the outer labia, the groin area, the belly, the sweet cheek, the mons, the mons, which is the fatty pad over the pubic bone, essentially the top part of the pubic hair.
Uh-huh.
That's one of the places where the blood plasma runs down with arousal so that you can get those chambers of all of that erectile tissue filled up. And if it's
Hmm.
stuck and not moving, it doesn't transmit the flow very well. And so yoni massage at the top, around the outer labia, kneading, petting it like a kitty from the top to the bottom with the grain of the fur, with
Hmm.
fur, not against.
Uh-huh.
And then clitoral hood, a little more back and forth across it, like playing it like a violin string, not even touching the clitoris yet, just over the top of it. The inner labia, touching them lightly, putting some lube on those too, like really making it feel good. And then inside where the inner labia open is called the vestibule, the little
Uh-huh.
doorway, the portal. He
Uh-huh.
loves fingers stroking up and down that vestibule. It gets the inner labia kind of feeling like they're getting turned on. And then she might like a finger resting on the entrance to her vagina, not pushing in. That little sphincter muscle, that little round muscle, it's a
Uh-huh.
very sensitive area and it doesn't want anything forced into it too soon, but it
Hmm.
likes the comfort and the grounding of a thumb or a fingertip, just holding it there.
Hmm.
And so there's two things I want to say. One is that every single time you give your partner, and I'll take you inside her vagina in just a second, but every single time that you have a yoni massage with your partner, she's going to want different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because even after menopause, we women are on 28-day hormonal cycles. Whether we
Mm-hmm.
menstruate or not means nothing really.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And sometimes we are kitty cat and we want that petting and softness and coziness and holding. And sometimes we're a lioness and we're ravenous and we want
Uh-huh.
stronger and harder touch and we want it to just be more sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And she's never going to know what that is until the very moment that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that she can feel comfortable just saying whatever it is that she wants in the moment and you give it to her, the more that she begins to trust that you really want her to have that pleasure. And the more that she begins to communicate. One of the things that I think it's very important for women to understand is that we have two sets of lips on our body. We have
Uh-huh.
the lips on our mouth and we have the lips on our vulva. And the
Right.
lips on our vulva can't form words, so the lips on our mouth must do that for us.
Uh-huh.
But the lips on our vulva are talking to us all the time. We
Uh-huh.
always, if we tune into her, we have what is called interoception. It's one of our senses. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing that tells you, "Ooh, I'd really like to pass some gas," or "Oh, my tummy's sore," or whatever it is that you're feeling in your body. "Oh, I pulled
Uh-huh.
that muscle," or "Oh, I've got a back pain," or whatever. "Oh, my knee."
Right, right, right.
That's
Uh-huh.
that's interoception, and you can do that with your yoni, with your vulva. She is talking to you all the time. You need to listen to her and then use the lips on your mouth to speak the word she's trying to say. And I think
Makes
that's
sense.
for many women, they feel like I don't know what I want. I just know what I'm getting isn't it. It's like, no, actually you do know what you want. You might start with, I want it lighter, I want it harder, go up, don't stop doing that. You know what you
Mm-hmm.
want. She's telling you all the time and it's different every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a guy hears, oh, okay, you mean I can't get it right? So I just have to listen. It's not on me to figure it out. She's going to tell me and help me figure it out. And when she's like, okay, I'll tell him. And then he starts to get the feedback that he needs. And then he starts winning, which is what he wants to do. He wants
Mm-hmm.
to do a good job. He wants to be respected for his work. That's what he wants from you. And
Uh-huh.
you've got to help him. What
Right.
she wants is to be adored and appreciated and encouraged. That's what she wants. And so it's very important for him to say, you're doing a great job. You look beautiful. You smell good. I love to have my hands on you. I can see you're getting more turned on. I mean, one of the most common and best techniques that you can do is to say what you see. It's called hypnosing.
Uh-huh.
Hypnosis is saying what you see as a form of learning.
Right.
Just as someone would describe to you how to do something,
Uh-huh.
if you describe what you're doing, you learn how to do it better. And so
Uh-huh.
hypnosis is a very, very when you think about bedroom communication, there's an ascension model.
Yes.
And one of the
Uh-huh.
very earliest things is being comfortable saying what you need. And
Mm-hmm.
then the second one is encouragement and
Uh-huh.
adoration.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is saying what you see. That's your
Uh-huh.
third level. So
Okay.
these are your baby steps to having incredible not only bedroom communication but communicating in
Uh-huh.
your marriage.
Yeah,
It
yeah. Uh-huh.
starts with really good bedroom communication because if you can say those things, you can say anything. And when you realize you
Mm-hmm.
can hear anything and you actually like knowing, so empowering how much honesty creates a depth of intimacy that makes your marriage an unassailable entity.
Yes. Love that. That is so good.
You want to look for every opportunity to be having these learning experiences together.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're serious about sex all the time, if it's always just like, okay, I'm gonna get a hard on it, we're gonna have some intercourse, going to give her an orgasm, and you're
Sounds
all
so
up in your head
boring.
and you're all like, oh my God, it's like the last thing you want to do is be with Mr. Tidy, like, oh,
Right.
I'm gonna make her have an orgasm. What you want is, honey, I have these fun things I'm gonna do to your yoni. here, let me show you what they are. And she's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
you sound fun. Hey, do it. Hear me. I like your way to skills, That's a million times better.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta have that enthusiasm for sure.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's a yoni massage.
That's great. Thanks for the detail. That is fantastic. And that's why it's so important to be fully warmed up. Can we end with maybe one or two of your favorite intercourse techniques? You already talked about the heart tongue technique, but there's
Yeah.
another one about thrust and time that you've taught me.
Oh, yeah.
Can we cover that briefly?
Oh, yeah. That is a good one. I
Uh-huh.
always say that thrust in time, which is at thrustintime.com, it's an intercourse technique that pretty much guarantees she's going to have an orgasm from intercourse. And it's the technique that I think probably I get the most emails with the most exclamation points from people who've done it and been like, "Ah," that's like
Good.
always one of those, oh my God, with 10 exclamation points.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And essentially what it is it's an old classic. It's a Taoist thrusting technique
Mm-hmm.
created over 2,000 years ago by the Taoist sexual master.
Uh-huh.
And once you learn some of these other things like, and the heart tongue and penis pivoting and understanding what the vagina is actually wanting from a penis
Uh-huh.
and, all these different things, then you can begin this thrust in time. And it's based on a 10 count of thrust. And it's also based on a concept of shallow and deep thrusts.
Mm-hmm.
So you start off with, and there's this notion of unconscious competence. First, you start out with conscious incompetence. You're like, I don't
Uh-huh.
even know what I'm doing here, and it's
Uh-huh.
like, oh God, I got to count by 10. And then after a while, your body has so much muscle memory of it that you're unconsciously competent about it. And that is that you use this 10 count and you do 9 shallow strokes, short,
Mm-hmm.
shallow, just at the entrance to the vagina,
Mm-hmm.
just the tip inside, very slow. And then you do 1 long, deep stroke all the way in, not hurting
Mm-hmm.
her, not pounding her, not fast, just
Mm-hmm.
nice, but
Mm-hmm.
all the way in. And then her vagina, all of a sudden, it's like, what? What was that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, more. And
Uh-huh.
then the vagina is like, "Arr, give it to me."
Uh-huh.
And maybe she's never felt that before, but there's this
Uh-huh.
tantalizingness. So then you do 8 short, shallow strokes and 2 long, deep strokes. And she
Uh-huh.
goes, oh, I need more of that. I need more, one more, one more. Well,
Uh-huh.
okay. All right. I'm going to give it to you. Here
Uh-huh.
we go. 7 little short, shallow strokes. 3 long, nice. And all of a sudden, when you get to 4 or 5 counts,
Uh-huh.
she's like, I just had my first orgasm from intercourse. Oh my God. So it's because she's never had what is essentially a toggling of her nervous system. And
Yes.
toggling of her nervous system, like you do all the other things. You do the yoni massage, you play with her boobs, play with her nipples, you make out with her, you do all the things, you get, and then you do Taoist thrusting. And she ain't gonna laugh. She gonna have some orgasms.
Uh-huh.
And this much, right?
Uh-huh.
You'd be like,
Right.
you could always do it,
Uh-huh.
it's so great. And so that's a very, very exciting thing. So thrustintime.com is where you find exactly how to do that, the sex positions I recommend, how you don't have to count out loud, by the way.
That'd be weird.
You can tell her what you're doing. You don't have to tell her what you're doing. You guys
Uh-huh.
can practice it together. It doesn't matter. It's all good, however you want to approach it.
Uh-huh. Now, so what's a glissando for those that haven't heard that term?
Yeah, the glissando is an interesting one, and I think it works best in doggy style. But remember that everyone's body dynamics are very different. And one of the
Mhm.
best things to do is try a lot of different sex positions because we're all so different that the love that you make with one person is totally different than the love you make with another person, in large part due to body dynamics. And
Right.
so Doggy tends to generally work well, and it's this notion. The notion that instead of you thrusting into your partner like
Uh-huh.
this,
Uh-huh.
you're holding still and you're moving her on you.
Gotcha.
And then helps because guys generally are pretty stiff in their psoas and their hip areas.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when you're trying to move your hips, you need to be working on your hip movement technique. You need to be doing the cat cow yoga
Yeah,
and
yeah.
getting flexible in that.
Mhm.
And so when a guy can finally get his hips swiveling, it's incredible, but most guys can't. And so the glissando is a way that he can glide her. He's better holding a rhythm with his hands a lot of times. And
Mhm.
so if you think about glissando, it's actually a term in harp music that is those cascading
Uh-huh.
rhythms, those kind
Uh-huh.
of like angel sounds they make.
Uh-huh.
And when you're sliding her back and forth on your penis, you're really able to give her a lot of. You can slide her to the side, you can get up high, you can go down low. And so
Uh-huh.
you can kind of control her. The second part that's really good about glissando is that when you move a woman's body, you move her emotions. It's very similar to when you're training a horse. We're
Mhm.
all animals. When a horse is acting like a jerk, you don't
Uh-huh.
hit it or yell at it. You just make it stop. You move it in a circle to get its attention.
Uh-huh.
That's the same with a woman. You want to get her attention, move her body, lift her up, pick her and move her. You know, just glissando her on you and you
Uh-huh.
will get her attention and you will move her in ways she may have never been moved before. So these subtle little things that work very, very well for learning so many more intercourse techniques that can trigger all those orgasms. And what'll happen is she'll start to have an orgasm. It'll get better. It'll get stronger. Then she'll have a few more. And pretty soon she'll be orgasming the entire time you're making love. Pretty much the whole time she can come. It's not like a man's ejaculatory orgasm where he's one and done because he's conflated orgasm with intercourse. He thinks they go
Right.
together. Or conflated orgasm with ejaculation. I'm sorry.
Yes,
He
yes. Uh-huh.
he thinks that that's together, but it's not. He can
No.
have all those same orgasms she can. He just doesn't know that, but she
Uh-huh.
kind of does know she can be multi-orgasmic, and so she's more apt to get there more quickly than he because he's been just doing this one path to orgasm his whole life where
Mhm.
she's had a few societally recognized paths to orgasm.
Yeah.
It's
Talk
all mental.
I love that. That's why the brain is the biggest sex organ too. Can you talk about cross training if you're used to using a vibrator in intercourse? I think that's the term, cross train. Like you're moving from one way that you're used to doing the whole time. You need to grow those neural pathways to adopt a new way of having an orgasm. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Orgasmic cross training is the notion that there are 8 kinds of sex tool. I don't call them toys. There's so much more than that. Eight
Oh,
kinds of
yeah.
sex tools for the vulva and vagina owner, and there are 4 for the penis owner that help our bodies learn how to have orgasms from all different kinds of stimulation. And
Hmm.
I think early on, it's fantastic to integrate lovemaking tools into your experience, that they just heighten the pleasure so much. And I'll tell you that I think I kind of marked it. I was writing, I have a sex tips newsletter. It goes out 5 days a week. You can get on it at betterlover.com. And I was yesterday or the day before, I was writing my daily email and I said, this is the moment in time when men are getting over their distrust and fear of bringing tools into the bedroom. The tide has turned. The tide has
Uh-huh.
officially turned. Guys are now like, I want her to have as many orgasms as I possibly can. I want her to have all the toys. I buy her a
Uh-huh.
toy for Christmas. I buy her a toy for Valentine's Day. I buy her a toy for her birthday. We're always using toys. The more
Uh-huh.
toys I have, the more ways she finds to come. And the more comes she has, the more sex she wants to have with me. And that's what I want too. And I love it. And I get all the credit for it anyway. I love that, guys. Look, they need the one guy was like, I get all the credit for it anyway. I don't. And I thought that is such a dude thing because guys, what do they want? They want to be respected for a job well done. They don't care
Uh-huh.
what the tools are. What are they building a house without power tools? No. Why would they be having sex without power tools,
Exactly.
So vibrators do not ruin your ability to have orgasms. Vibrators improve your ability to have orgasms of all different kinds, stimulating all different parts, giving you many more neural pathways to the brain so that you can activate much more easy access to lots of orgasms. So collect all 10 or what
Uh-huh. Right, right.
go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the ones that I have at orgasmiccrosstraining.com are, to me, the best choices for lots of different experiences. There's a wand, a liquor, a thruster, a rabbit, a G-spot toy. There's prostate tools for men. There's strokers. There's all kinds of things that are really fun. And on that page, I've also denoted which ones are the winners of my Quiet Vibe Awards.
Uh-huh.
Because if you've got kids in the house, you do not want some of these, toys that do sound like they're drills or something.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
And your kids are like, "What are you guys doing in there? Are you remodeling?" Yes, you're remodeling your mother's vagina.
It's funny.
So I like quiet toys with massive motors and then
Mhm.
I have ones that are like, I have the ultra quiet. And
Uh-huh.
then I have the ones that are like, this was not quiet, but you gotta have it
Uh-huh.
anyway. There are
Uh-huh.
those toys too.
Right.
Sometimes,
Uh-huh.
like the air stimulators, those are ones where they're not quiet, but
No.
you will want them.
Uh-uh. We had a Hitachi wand that was really
Yeah,
loud. Uh-huh.
too
Yeah.
loud.
Uh-huh.
But the Vim is 50% quieter, and that's on that page. And that's one of my core
Oh, gotcha.
recommendations.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Susan, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. Thanks for coming on and
Oh,
teaching
Dan.
me and teaching everyone today. I really love your resources, and we'll link to them in the show notes for those listening. As we end, is there anything else you wanted to add to today's conversation? And then please be sure to tell us where people can go to find more about you one more time, your main website.
Sure. Betterlover.com is probably a good place to start. And if you get on my email list and you have any questions, you can reply to any email I send you and you can ask me anything. I get all the replies right to my personal inbox and I answer them. So just don't be afraid to ask about anything I said today. And last thing I would add is, what was it about this conversation that hit home most for you? What action are you going to take today? What's the first step for you in having the sex life that you deserve? Because those of us that have a great sex life till the day we die live a longer, happier, healthier life. And that's what I want for you.
Yes, agreed. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in accelerating growth in your marriage, either sexually, emotionally, or spiritually, I want to invite you to work with me in my affordable coaching program called Next Level. More information about Next Level and my fun and sexy apps for couples are available at getyourmarriageon.com. Please also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to tell your married friends. I promise, they will thank you for life. Now go get your marriage on.